you put a different jersey on, and then suddenly I become the most hateful person in the world.
Hello and Kate made a vulture to MudderRucker, the podcast all about Irish women's rugby. Join me, Elva O'Nolan.
And me, Cianan Willor.
As we bring you the latest on the Irish women's team, from squad selections to match analysis and everything in between. Each week we'll be joined by some of the biggest names in Irish women's rugby to get their insights, stories and behind-the-scenes perspectives on life at the top of the game.
If you enjoy the show, be sure to follow, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to grow.
Now, strap on your scrum cap, get stuck in, and let's talk Irish women's rugby.
Welcome to episode 4 of MudderRucker, the only podcast dedicated to Irish women's rugby. Joining us again is Irish international, Munster and Leopold's captain Chloe Pearse, and Irish Ulster Cup powerhouse Ilse van Staden. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having us.
Today we discuss round 3 of the Six Nations as France took on Wales and Breathe. Ireland hosted England in almost Musgrave Park, and Scotland hosted Italy in Edinburgh. But also delve into the business end of the season and discuss players to watch. But first, the big game of the weekend, Ireland versus England. Probably somewhat of an inevitable result, but as an insight into the development of the Irish side going toe-to-toe with the number one side in the world for 50 minutes is frankly immense. I think from a technical perspective, we've all caught out the handling errors we've seen against France in round 1, shown our incredible defensive capabilities, and stunned the English, I think, somewhat in the first half. Chloe, perhaps a cliche game of two halves, but a clear continuation of Ireland's growth. What did you make of it?
Yeah, at half-time, I think we all sat there and I was down in it and the atmosphere is immense and just sitting there thinking, can we do it? Is this going to be WXV? We really frustrated England. We got a lot of turnovers, but the girls never stopped working. It was desperate, relentless. It was frighteningly good, I suppose. And then, as you said, I think it was kind of the inevitable happened where, they emptied the bench, we got a yellow card, and I think we just ran out of that little bit of steam that we needed for that 80 minutes. But that first 50 going toe-to-toe, as you said, with the best in the world, it was incredible. And I think they can take a lot of pride from it. Unfortunately, I think the scoreline probably doesn't reflect the game, from anyone who comes in and sees that scoreline, they probably think, oh, England's trashed Ireland again. And, while they had those 40 points on us at the same time, that was not a reflection of the game. It was, we really put it up to them and we showed what we're capable of. And I think if we had played like that versus France, we'd have beaten France well. If you're to compare the two performances, but we have to take a lot of faith now going into those last two games versus Wales and Scotland over the next 2 weeks. And for me, we play like that, we're looking at 2 bonus point wins, and I couldn't see it being anything else.
Ilse, what for you stood out from the Irish perspective? Where did you perform particularly well?
So when I was actually listening to it while I was driving back from Peterborough to Stansted on the M11, and when Amy Lee scored that try, I think you guys could have heard me shout. The people in the cars around me must have thought I was losing my mind. But there was a stage where we had the English had 85% of the possession in the first half without scoring a single point. And the defensive effort was absolutely relentless to keep the number one side in the world out of your try area. With 85% possession, the defence is what stood out for me. And defence is a mindset. And that tells you a lot about the mindset of the players in that group at the minute. Set piece, I'm a little disappointed by the scrums. That was a weak point for us. A prop getting sent off for scrum infringements in the 50th minute is what ultimately buckled us. You cannot give England the opportunity to run at you with 14 players. And I do think if we didn't lose Niamh at that stage, he would have had a much more attractive scoreline to reflect on, and that would have told a much better story of how the game was actually played by the Irish women.
Yeah, it really was a monumental defensive display in that game. It really was. To stonewall England like that for half an hour, just to keep them completely shut. They looked shell-shocked, frankly, at times. I mean, you compare this to last year where Ireland's defence faced, let's face it, significant challenges. I mean, conceded 170 points over the 5 games. It's 34 per game on average. This year under Hugh Hogan, there's been notable progress. It's 88 conceded over 3 games. That's an average of 29 per game, with arguably the 2 strongest teams behind us. I'll come to you first. What changes have you noticed in Ireland's defensive setup this year? Is it about better structure? Is it improved communication? Or is it individual performances stepping up?
I think it's probably a marriage of all three. I think they've definitely come under that system with you, and you can see it's working. But I think they're just like, I think it's individual performance as well, but they don't work as individuals. That's what's funny about it. But so while those individual performances are outstanding, you can clearly see they're working for each other. And like this week, it was a bit different, and I think, maybe having been dropped the last game and then coming in, like Brittany Hogan made 21 tackles. She was immense. Like, you had Erin King make 17, then you had Aoife Wafer and Darrow made 15. I actually was surprised. I thought Darrow made about 30 tackles because I just felt watching the game, she was everywhere. So I actually was a little surprised when I only saw 15 beside her name. But it just, for me, she was everywhere. But I think they were all like that. So I think we just have a much more balanced, I suppose, proportion of people making tackles. We're not relying on one person to make those big hits. It's everyone. It's the 8 players that are there in the pack, plus then you have in the back line. And one thing really stood out for me this game was Dan O'Brien. It's probably, I would say, hands down the best game I've ever seen her play. She kicked incredibly well, but she made some defensive reads. Like, she's not known for her defense, and she made 2 stop-outs. Like I would have said, if she didn't make those 2 reads, and she had 2 dominant tackles when you look at the stats, which for a 10, I'm sure you'll take. There's not many 10s in the country taking that. So, but I think the system, like, they're so in tune with the system, and everyone seems to be on the same page, that it's just allowing us line speed. And then you've brilliant players over the ball like Erin King, who are relieving that pressure when it was needed most. And England turned the ball over, a colossal amount of times. They were getting more and more frustrated. They were giving away penalties. Like, we gave away the same amount of penalties, but I'd say half of ours were in the scrum, if not more. So that'll tell you, like, what went on around the park. And for every turnover, that just galvanised us. You could see the energy the girls were getting off those turnovers and off those defensive stockouts. And England were just getting so frustrated. Like, Hannah Bodeman was complaining to the ref every 2 minutes. Like, if I was the ref, I'd have pinged her back. She never stopped. Ilse's laughing because she's props love to give out. I know all that, but I really was on the sideline saying the ref should have got a handle on that earlier, I thought, with her, because every time there was a penalty, she gave out. Every time there was a turnover, she gave out. She never stopped yapping. But I think that's where sometimes I like the captain to be in the pack, like Lee is out in the wing, and because that's what I would be saying. I'd be saying, ref, she's not the captain, and she can't keep talking to you. But that was just, I think, a sign of we were really frustrating them by such a strong defensive effort that, one of the best news heads in the world was a very quiet game because of the work the girls did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ilse, do you have any thoughts on that yourself?
Yeah, you look at that back, especially Hannah Bodeman and Maud Muir, you would have expected them to do a hell of a lot more compared to what they have been, or what they did on Saturday. So now, defensively, it's a mindset. You connect with each other, you work for each other, you know whether you're going to make the tackle in your head or not, and it's just belief. When you have that belief, you go for it. And the girls they're connected. This is the most connected I have seen an Irish team in the last 5-6 years. And they are just working for each other.
And in terms of specialist coaching, how effective is that? I imagine in, your time as a player with the Irish setup, there wasn't as much of that, or, it wasn't as structured. We have the likes of Alex Codling, Hugh Hogan, Dennis Fogarty in there. How important are those specialist coaches to the development of the Irish team?
Yeah, like, I think bringing those in, like, you need that. That's what's in the men's game. That's what England have. So having someone who's, that in tune with what's going on. Like, the line-out coach, Cotters, he's down working with Munster, So, like, while the line-out was probably a poor set piece in general, was poor at the weekend, we've seen it perform. We've seen the work that's been done. It just allows us then to, like, really get into the nitty gritty and the the girls to learn like exactly what is needed and really tune in on what good looks like. So that's what every other team in the world is doing. You know, you have attack coaches, defense coaches. So why should we be any different? And it's worked. You can see like the investment that the IRFU have obviously put in to bring in these coaches who, you know, clearly know their stuff, has definitely paid dividends, because we've seen it in their performances. We've seen it in the system, and we've seen that, you know, now we're not just, you know, and I know we still lost 49-5, but at the end of the day, you know, we really went toe to toe with them for 50 minutes. So now the next step is, how do we bridge that 30-minute gap? That's what it is. You know, that's the next. I'm sure the girls won't sit there saying, oh, well, you know, that was it. They were the best in the world. Like, they're definitely going to be heads down saying, what can we do now to close that 30 minutes to make sure we stay in that fight longer or win that fight?
Is a lot of that, do you think, you know, the difference between the club structures with a lot of the Irish playing versus the PWR? For me, it kind of run of, yes, okay, we got a yellow card and that was a big impact for us, but I think a lot of it was the power of the English team, their ability to switch it up and, you know, go deep in their attack and kick the ball away from the Irish, but also the conditioning of it as well. I think we appeared to tire in the last maybe 30 minutes or so. Do you think that had an impact in the results?
Yeah, and I don't think that the girls aren't fit, you know. Like, I think maybe like when you look at that English squad where you have a lot of Saracens, a lot of Gloucester, a lot of Bristol, like, they're used to hitting big bodies. So, like, it is tough, like, putting in defensive efforts. Like, you can make 21 tackles against, you know, a player who's 80 kg, or you can make 21 tackles against a player who's 110 kg. And I can tell you which one you're going to get tired from quicker, you know? Yeah. So I think that's probably part of it a little bit. And then obviously they bring on a bench, they get front football. Like, you know, we probably don't have the depth in some areas, and our bench definitely lacks the impact. Whereas, you know, Maud Muir got player of the game, and then Sarah Byrne said, hold my pint, I'm coming on, and scores 2 tries and runs riot. You know, how do you live with that? Like, the 2 best tight heads in the world are playing for the same team, and one of them will run over you, and in the next one will actually probably earn around you, because that's what Sarah Byrne did after she ran over everyone.
Yeah, no, she's an incredibly powerful carrier. She is. And for somebody to come off the bench like that, that's just frightening. That is just frightening. Speaking of frightening, though, you mentioned earlier Dorothy Wall. She had an incredible impact on the game. Her physicality, Ilse, was just phenomenal. She seems to be, like Chloe said earlier, she seems to be involved in so much throughout the game. And, you know, even off the ball, you can see her having a chat to people. She's definitely growing as a leader. For me, I think a lot of that has come about because she's moved over to the PWR. I think she's developed hugely, you know, since last summer, really loved Chiefs. And how do you see that development progressing? Do you see her becoming even more of a leader?
I'm a big believer in steel sharpens steel. If you want to be the best, you have to train against the best week in, week out. Like you said, there's a massive difference between tackling props in Ireland, now with the exception of a couple of us, who is 80 kilos and just not as abrasive as some of the English players. To play in the PWC is a completely different ballgame. I think she has developed because of the skill investment that's put into her by the Chiefs, and we are very fortunate that she's bringing it back to Irish level. It is a loss for the Irish club level, and I'm a big believer in this, that if you play at a really high level, it's very important to go back to your grassroots and put that skills back into grassroots. We see it in the provincial game as well. So many of the Ulster players, and especially who plays club rugby in Leinster, they come up to Ulster week in, week out. Skill investment is not coming back to a Ulster club; it's going to a Leinster club. I think, Chloe, you guys are the same. You see a lot of that with people who travel to go and play for Connacht and play for Leinster. So I just think she is just going to get better. If she stays injury-free, she is going to be a phenomenal ball player and a very big leader in the Irish squad for at least the next 5 to 6 years. and she is going to just take those girls with her.
I think, we look at the PWR as this phenomenal competition, and it's likely the best club competition in the world. But if we look at our own domestic competition, the AIL, it's been, I suppose, left behind a little bit because of the Celtic Challenge, but I think it's still very much a breeding ground for real talent. We're coming up to this is end of the season, the final that yourself are playing in 2 weeks' time, the Aviva. What kind of talent do you see still coming through the AIL, and who are players to watch out for?
Yeah, there's definitely still a place for it. I think, as Ilse said, that's where the grassroots start. That's where these players come from. They have to start somewhere. And, even when I look across the weekend at the semi-finals, for the players that were released, it was a huge boost to Old Belvo. They got back Katie Corrigan, they got back Railway getting back Bowlesy, made Deanie going to Blackrock, and for ourselves, we had Jane Kelsey and Katrina Finn come in. So it's brilliant then for those players who aren't getting selected still to have somewhere to go, and it's not put that into practice, because that's why you're training. You want to play. There's across, even yesterday, the Blackrocks from half, Casey Jackson. I remember her the first game we played against her, and I remember her 2 weeks ago, and she, for me, is definitely one to watch. I think she's Leinster. I think she's one to watch, up and coming, very quick, very nippy. Obviously, I have my own biases on our club, but I won't go to those ones. But even down in Ballincollig, you've Aibeen McGrath. She's only 18, and she was involved. She got her first cap with us in Munster in the Inchborough final. She got a couple of minutes off the bench, but she's a phenomenal back row, up and coming, and she's going to be playing in the 20s summer festival as well. But we've definitely seen a lot of players come through, and then from there go on to the Celtic Challenge, but not bridge it into that Irish kind of Six Nations squad, but be able to go back to their clubs too. So there's talent sprinkled all over the country. It's just about getting games and being able to see it. I know a lot of teams have been hit harshly by the Celtic Cup, and if you're in the luxurious place and you have two teams and you have a second team that you can kind of dip into, that's great. But if you don't, that hampers small teams. I know Tullow, even not having players in Celtic Challenge, but any injuries, that kills them. You lose two players and you're a club that's just come up. They haven't built the depth. It's going to hurt you. So, with the Celtic Challenge, personally, I would have preferred them to have invested in the league. As we said, the two most competitive games in the Celtic Challenge were the two Irish teams playing each other. If they had let all those players, 46 of them, play in the league week in, week out, we could have had 5 or 6 competitive games, if not more. And then, as Ilse said, you have steel sharpening steel. The league becomes better, the players become better, and we can try bridge that gap for the PWR and try keep players here. There's a reason they're going over there. You can't begrudge them for doing it. Look at Dara, she's become a fantastic, she was a good player going over. She's a fantastic player now. So you can't begrudge them, but I would have loved if we invested in the AIL more and kept our homegrown players here and just had better quality games across the board. But there's still some great players coming through. But yeah, the AIL still has a place in my heart anyway, so I'll continue to drive within it.
Ilse, you've played in the AIL for a good number of years as well. In terms of the competitive level of the competition at the moment, is it on par with what it was a few years ago? Is it still growing, or is it something that's kind of dwindling a little bit? How do you feel, Mr. Dawson?
I do think the skill level on show in the AIL is getting better, but that is due to competitions like the Celtic Challenge, the likes of provincial teams now in Ulster, where they now have national pathways and youth pathways, and everybody who's part of those pathways and in the Celtic Challenge gets the opportunity to become a better rugby player because of the time that they spend studying the game. For me, the AIL is my home league. It's where I feel at home. In my old age, I've toyed with the idea of dropping down a league, but I had this discussion at home the other day about dropping down to a club that plays in a lower league, and I was just told that you're going to get frustrated. Why do you want to do that to yourself? So I love playing AIL. I love going out there and seeing how Irish rugby is developing. What would be much better is if we were in a position where we could attract talent from other countries on short terms to come and bring them in to play in the AL. That would be fantastic. But Cook is pretty much in the same position where we had the bones of something like 16 injuries on our books this year, which for a club like Cook, we've got five women's teams within a 6-mile radius in Belfast that all feeds into the same pond, and that is very, very difficult with players to come to Cook to play AIL if their mates are going to Queens or to Harlequins, because Harlequins is as the crow flies 1.5 miles away from Cook. But I do think that we need to develop the AIL, because that is where you pick up your rough gems, and then as you take them through the system, they just become more and more polished. And then whenever they do get the opportunity to tug out for Ireland, they are ready to rumble and put a name on what they're doing.
What fascinates me about the AIL is that I love the kind of parochial nature of it at times. You see the likes of Wicklow, for example, and, Elvis Kenman coming in and getting her first cap in the Six Nations against England. The pride that you see across social media for the players out of those clubs, they feel very much a part of their development, and it's a club, it's a huge community that's behind them. It's fascinating to see, the likes of the development of those players who haven't had a chance to go off on a certain circuit or haven't had time within the PWR, and they're still developing up to the Irish team. So I think there's very much still a place for it. And, it is something that people are keeping passionate about. And moving back to the Ireland-England game a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about our ruck efficiency, if I can. I think that is something that stood out to me probably across the last number of seasons. A place where we struggled a little bit. I've often found that at ruck time, particularly our own rucks or attacking rucks, we've been turned over quite a lot, and it's been a weak point for us, and it's something that's very much shifted this year for us. We've been incredibly intense at ruck time. We're getting quick ball, and we're getting tidy ball out of the back of the ruck for scrum halves to play off. How important is that in terms of developing an attack and building into the game, Chloe? Is it something that's really, really crucial to our game, and it is a part of our development in attack? Is it one of the key developments we've seen?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Like, we are definitely trying to play faster, and like, as a defence, the quicker the ruck ball, the harder it is to keep getting back behind that gain line, and you kind of hope that the quicker the ruck ball, the more on top rugby you can play, and you can get over the gain line with the carries. But with a quick ruck ball, it kind of means a lot of people have to be in tune at what's going on, especially when we're running, that diamond-shaped pod with the back out the back of it. You nearly have to be a phase ahead all the time, which is, you really got to understand then what rugby looks like. That's part of what I see is, you got to know that that's going, okay, we're going to crash here. Then the next ruck's going to be here. We're going to hit the edge. Okay, we know we're coming back off the edge into that pod with the back out the back. The next pod then has to be connected if we run that kind of sweep play, along with having a hard runner outside. So it's an ideal world to say we want to play quick. I think everyone says that, don't they? We love a quick game. You tell the ref, we're going to try to go quick off this, so, we don't want them slowing the ball down. But in reality, if you don't understand what that shape looks like and where you're supposed to be 2 phases before it happens, you actually can't do that. Luckily for us, I do think we're in tune. There's times I think we kind of miss the jump a little bit, where when we sweep back to Dana, we're not connected enough. And what I'd love to see her doing more off that kind of sweep where she comes around is to really attack, because if that gap is there, they either have to jam in or she's through, whereas I find sometimes she ships it on. And there is a place for that too, if you want to get the balls to the edge, you just ship it on. We've lightning fast wingers and we've seen it. Like Eve Higgins does it really well, she did it really well against Italy. And that kind of line is what I'm speaking of. I'd love to see Dana do that a little bit more. But I do think we are trying to play quick to suck teams in, to play to our strengths out wide where we have really speedy players. Unfortunately, probably didn't get to do enough of that, as Ilse said, England had most of the ball. So most of the time where we were really strong was defensively. We never actually got to see that attacking prowess in play. The try was a moment of magic. It was a fantastic kick, and even who outruns Abby Dow, bar Amy Lee Costigan? You know what I mean? I didn't even think that was possible. She came out of absolutely nowhere. That'll tell you, but that's pure speed and pure determination, for her to get over for that try. But yeah, I think the quick ball is great, but everyone has to be on the same page, and it's great to see us do it. But I think that'll develop as well as we keep going and we keep playing this system. Last year, as you said, the ball wasn't as clean. So it takes getting used to playing that quick also.
And in terms of rugby IQ, do you think, Ilse, that we have developed that progressively over the last year and a half under Scott Wieland?
We definitely have. The players are understanding the chess game that you are playing, in the sense that you have to earn that right to go wide. How do you do that? How do you open up gaps? You do that by making the defence think that, they've done this all day, and then you have the ability to change. And that is pure rugby IQ. That is understanding where you are on the pitch. That's understanding the players playing around you, and that's understanding how you want to get from one side of the pitch to the other side. In an ideal world, anything under a 2-second ruck is perfect. Because, again, if I'm playing defence and it's a 2-second ruck, I need to make the decision. Am I going to get on my bike and get outside because we need to realign really quickly? Or am I going to just ruck watch and let them run? Where if I over pursue, my back opens up. If I under pursue, I'm chasing the game. So ruck speed gives you the platform to launch attacks off. And the quicker your ruck is, the harder the defence has to work to get themselves in a position where they can physically defend. And that is on the defensive side. Again, what Ireland did against England, that really worked for them because they understood the assignment of making that read and recognizing that there's going to be quick rucks. We need to work in our groups and get around that corner, set it up, go up, meet them. Don't let Sarah Byrne run at you. So yeah, actually, just in terms of related to rugby IQ, it was really interesting actually to see the England leadership group choosing to stay on the pitch at half-time to assess and address the scare that the Irish side had put into them. And frankly, it showed in the second half that it was obviously a very effective meeting. That level of ability to self-correct and adapt decision-making and leadership, I mean, that's obviously coming from steel sharpening steel in the PwC and internationally. How can you go about trying to recreate that for an Irish side?
Games, I suppose, are, one thing I'll always say is sit down and watch rugby and talk through what's happening. That's where the analysis has to go. It has to go to that level where you get to a point and, maybe you recreate in training, like you say, look, we're down to 14 players. This is the scenario I'm giving you. What do you think we should do here? And then allow people to make mistakes so that they can learn, so that when it comes to it, on game day, you've already been presented with something similar. It'll never definitely be the same. We know, it's impossible to recreate all those things. But yellow cards happen, you know what I mean? Sometimes you're just in the wrong place, the wrong time. Red cards happen, you can just get high, So you have to kind of plan for that, I think. But then, you can't plan for everything. So it's tough. But I think a lot of it is that rugby IQ England have, when you look their second, Ellie Kildon got her 50th cap last week. Abby Dow got her 50th cap this week. The level of games they have played have just been, and a volume-wise, much more than we have. That's where you need to, for us to keep building, we need to stay in WXV1. We're in the World Cup. We need to get to a quarter-final and, be in that melting pot and go from there. That's where you learn those things. You can try recreate and train and all you want. I think it's a great idea and it's great. But in practice, it has to be on the pitch because, like you said yourself, it was the leadership group that were self-correcting. Like, the coaches aren't on the pitch with you, you know, and like while they can get messages in, you know, you have to be able to do that yourself. Someone has to take the bull by the horns and say, this isn't working. We need to change and this is what we're going to do. There's space here. We need to start doing that. We need to start looking after the ball more. You know, we're getting isolated. You know, they've turned us over a couple of times. We need to get more connected. Like, but I think it's just like games.
100%. And I think I'd say the warm-up matches this summer against Scotland and Canada specifically actually are a great step in that kind of direction. Canada is the kind of level of competition we really need to be playing on a regular basis, testing ourselves against to try and get those hard learnings in.
Okay, we might shift briefly to the first game of the weekend, France versus Wales. And I think it was a bit of a frustrating game for me to watch. And I think France themselves were quite frustrated playing that game. I think a few of the officials' calls were probably niggling at them a little bit, and you could see the likes of Bijot getting kind of annoyed at times. I think Wales were probably lucky to get a few of the scrum penalties that they got. Maybe a few of them were a little bit harsh. But I think Wales showed some promise. While they're still quite structured and not a reactive team, they're definitely a physical side that can build into a game. And with Sean Lynn coming in, I think the impact he's going to have is going to take some time. So from your perspective, what is it like when there is a changeover of coach? You know, how hard is it for that coach to establish a system and a culture and to generate team cohesion?
I think firstly, people need to understand that as a player group, we are not the people who has brought the coach in. The coach has been brought in by a management team. So the players are there, the coach is there, and between the two groups, you basically have to do the best that you can within the situation. It also means that as a player, you need to be willing to change. Nobody is a perfect person. Nobody's a perfect rugby player. If a coach comes to me and brings a better culture, I want to buy into that. You have to let go of the ideas that you had beforehand if you want to get better. And if you look at what he's done at Gloucester and the culture that they've built at Gloucester, if they can basically mimic that and bring that into Wales, I think within the next 24 months, we are going to see a substantially different Welsh squad and Welsh team. The fact that the Welsh girls stuck with the French for big parts of the game, again, not really a true reflection of how the game went if you look at the scoreline. But I'm with you. It was frustrating to watch. It was frustrating to see certain decisions being made and certain impacts from the referee team. So yeah, that's basically it. I think they're going to make a massive culture change. That culture change in the next 2 years is going to bring Welsh rugby up, and it would be good to see again. It brings more competitive games for the teams that play in the Six Nations and in other competitions.
So looking at the French side, I feel certainly that they lack a little bit of consistency. They're not really an 18-minute team where they can perform at that high level that England show. What would you is the difference between the French and the English sides, and how can France bridge that gap in order for us to follow and bridge that gap also?
Yeah, I think like just their gameplay is a little bit mental at times, you know, like they're in structure and then they're just all picking like one by one at the end. And like, because they're individually good players, it's effective, you know, like it kind of worked against Wales, you know, like, and then they're throwing off loads but like, it's like they have a structure, but they don't have a structure. It's a bit like mad to watch. I don't really know what's going on, but then, you know, they have such individually class players that it works out at times against us and against Wales, you know, but against England, I don't know if it'll work that way for them. But then, you know, you see their first try off the maul, where for me, it looks like a very much planned move. Like, we're going to maul. If the maul stops, we're going to run a play with a runner out the back, and then across, like, the crossfield kick had to be planned because Emily Boulard was so wide, you know. So then I'm like, they obviously have these trick plays and set plays up their sleeves that they know they're going to do. But I just feel that their inconsistency comes from a lack of structure, where a team, you know, it just kind of all goes out the window and nobody really knows who's doing what. And then you've Bordan Sansus who's just going to do what she wants anyway, and most of the time it works, so she gets away with it, But like against England, I don't know will that work. But like, they've conceded some tries. Like obviously, we did score against England. They've conceded against us. They conceded against Scotland. They conceded against Wales again. So they're not like the full package. Maybe the weather didn't suit them as much as, they would have liked. You don't expect that in France, I suppose, in the Six Nations, the rain that was there, but they still found a way. They're still 3 from 3. They'll probably be 4 from 4, after the next game. And then, like crunch, and we'll see what happens. I still think England will be too strong, even though we put it up to them. But I still think we should have beaten France. Like I thought we were a better team than France that day. So I don't really think, okay, that's a measure of each other. But yeah, they need to find something, especially going into a World Cup year. They need to find their identity as a team. What are we actually trying to do? Because at the moment, I don't know who's calling the shots or who's making those plays, but it's mental to watch.
I have to say, I'm very marked there that you don't have a clue what's going on, because I certainly don't have a clue what's going on. It is kind of somewhat frantic, and it's, foot on the gas and foot off the gas again. It does feel like they don't have a kind of an identity or a real system there. Ilse, for you, does it seem that they are just kind of playing with a little bit of license to do a board on Sansu, or are they panicking a little bit?
Let's be very, very honest. Sansu is the linchpin that the French team revolves around. And if you look at consistency, is just, like you say, just not there. They're just not on the money yet. Now, I do know this is a World Cup here, which they might be given license to do what they express yourself, as I call it, to see who's going to fit in where. Because again, you need to know what your role's going to be. You need to know your position. You need to know where you're setting up the in order. And now is the time for them to figure that out. You don't want to be figuring this out in July. So maybe they are given a bit of license to express themselves. But I would like to see a bit more consistency from the French. And I think that's what the difference is between the French and the English. The English are relentless. They are cutthroats. We are 40 points up. You know what? We're not going to take our foot off the gas. We'll put another 40 points on you, because that's who we are. And that's a mentality. That is a pure mentality. If I've got my foot in your throat, I'm not going to take it off. It's staying there until that 80th minute. I do think if the French want to be big contenders in the World Cup, they need to get these systems in place so that everybody knows where they sit, how they fit into the place, and then they can just get the wheel greased. Because you are what you do. The more you do it, the more the formula works, the better you become at it.
Switching then to the Scotland-Italy game on Sunday, I feel that the Scottish perhaps lost their way a little bit throughout the game. I think in attack they might have run out of ideas, and I think on the whole they might be somewhat less than the sum of their parts. You look at the players the Scotland have, the likes of Chloe Riley, Nelson, Emma Orr, Rachel Malcolm, Evie Gallagher. These are incredible players, but they just don't seem to quite click, or they don't seem to have perhaps that license we talked about at the French to get a bit more creative. They're very one, I suppose, rugby. What for you isn't working for them, and what do they need to change?
Yeah, I think like their exits definitely needed to change. They kicked quite loosely to a very dangerous factory. The last thing you can do in international rugby is kick loosely and have a poor line chase, which is, I thought, what actually ultimately killed them that game. You're kicking to Luzzo and you're kicking to Dinka and you Vergoni, like these players who love open space. Like, I'd be saying, get the ball off the pitch when we're kicking, and they just didn't exit well, which is surprising considering the experience they have with Helen Nelson and with Lisa Thompson, with Chloe Riley. Like Chloe Riley's an incredible boot. I don't know why I'm saying we as if I'm Scotland now, and why they didn't kick. What was it, where that's come from? Why they didn't kick long and and ball off the pitch and ball into the row's edge, because in these games, like Rigoni, if she can go fast, she's going to go fast. So I thought that actually was ultimately what killed them. they got in the game, they got themselves back in the game, and then, they kicked loosely and they didn't manage. I just thought they didn't manage the game well from that. I wonder about their bench, like what have they to offer in the front row? I'm not too convinced that what they have coming in next is as good as what they have. And obviously it might not ever be as good as the reason the other people are starting, but, I think they're lacking a bit of depth. They're maybe 9 as well as an area where, they just lacking a bit of experience, but they should have enough. Like, now again, look, Italy were after getting, losing to England. We beat them well. Like, they had a point to prove. They were coming back off a tough loss against us as well. So they came out all guns blazing, and, all credit to them. They stuck with it. Like, Tunisi is, for the Italians, she had a tackle there near the end of the game where I think it was the Scottish prop. She absolutely leveled her. Like, it was, I sat at home with like my hands in front, my face, being like, oh, that's one of them ones where, as the prop getting up. Like, so I think the Italians just looked like they wanted a little bit more. And Scotland at home, like, it was really, I was surprised at the result, but, Italy were worth their win, and Scotland now need to go and regroup, and hopefully they don't regroup that much, because obviously we've played them yet, but I do think they come out a little bit stronger the next game. But yeah, they were surprisingly not as good as I thought they would be.
Certainly, Italy seemed to really bounce back after, a big score that Ireland put on them 2 weeks ago. And they definitely seem like the more ambitious side. I think Stefan is really becoming a general within that team. Probably not too unlike Bourdain Sansu, in that she's given a little bit of leeway. And so you spoke, before about, the effectiveness of when to scoot and when not at scrum half. I think she managed that really, really well. And Ilse, looking at the Italian side, who really stands out to you as the stalwarts of the group, the ones who are doing the hard work and really, really progressing? I think, the likes of Dinka, the likes of Duca in particular, really working well in the engine room. Who for you is the real performer within the Italian side?
Again, Stefan, she runs their attack. What's her name? Tunisi, who plays in the pack, is an absolute warrior. She puts her body on the line week in, week out. The other thing is, you look at the Italian back three. That is not someone. That's not someone that you want to kick a loose ball to. But like, I can think of less fun things to do than to just give them run and let them go. But Rigoni is another one that is a core player for them. She's been around a while. She has got exceptional rugby IQ, and she will die on the hill for the Italian team. She brings everybody together. If Rigoni goes forward, the Italian team as a whole generally goes forward as well, and that is an attack and defence. So they have a couple of players there that are their leaders, that puts them on front foot. And I do think for the Italians, this was a grud match compared to last year, because last year Scotland beat them for the first time in a couple of seasons. And coming out to Scotland, playing in Edinburgh and just doing themselves proud after the 2 games they've had, it just says something about the Italian passion and how they want to carry themselves in the rest of this competition.
Shout out also to the Italian jersey. That was a piece of art, I think. Beautiful, beautiful jersey. And just coming back to your own experiences as players, particularly at club level, how important are those kind of grudge matches, those rivalries? And who are your biggest rivals, or who have been in the past your biggest rivals, and what's it like to play them? I'll open to you first.
Yeah, I think any top 4 game, like, I don't mean to disrespect any team when I say top 4 game of, ourselves, Belvo, Railway and Blackrock, that's just the way it's been the last two or three seasons. Any top 4 game is a big game, we'd always eye those ones up. Obviously, the Railway games in the last 2 years have been real, they've been real, but I don't call them grudge matches as such, I would actually see Blackrock as more of a grudge match for us. Like the last few seasons we've had some cracking games with them, we've beaten them in last minute tries, and they've knocked us out of the AIL semi-finals 3 years ago. We knocked them out this year. Like there's been a good few twos and fro's. Obviously, the railway games are big. We've had like a lot of finals against them, and they're fantastic matches. But I think the Blackrock games for me are probably the real grudge matches, the ones, that you want to dig in like yesterday, and you want to really, as Ilse said, die on the hill. And that's what it was for us yesterday. Like, it was resilience and resolve, and it was just never say die no matter what was happening. And we really grounded out to win 15-12. And I think sometimes those close wins mean more than, big wins do, even if they're not good for the heart halfway through the game. But, afterwards, there's just much more, you get way more out of it. Like, but yeah, I think Blackrock's probably definitely a grudge match for us at the moment.
I think there's definitely always a team that you play against that it just means that little bit more to beat. And it's not necessarily always the best team in the league. It's just a team that you come up against, and like that there has been to and growing. So for you, who has that been over the last few seasons?
I love playing in the AIL. I love playing against the likes of you. Well, even though I don't say we're going out with the mindset that, it's got to be a big score being put on you. I love going out there and proving everybody that says, our team is not good enough wrong. I think the Good Girls this year proved that in that last couple of games where we pulled off a couple of shockers. Nobody saw us winning against Suts. Nobody saw us winning against Wegians. But the team that is definitely a game that I'm always up for is Galwegians. I love playing against Galwegians. They beat us by a single, I think it was 2 points a couple of years ago in the AIL Cup final. And there's always just been a bit of a little something between Cook and Galwegians. I don't mind the girls. I like them as people. You put a different jersey on, and then suddenly I become the most hateful person in the world, and I just want to beat you up. But for me it's Galwegians, and then of course always any Belfast derby with Malone is always a nice little added bonus.
Okay, another kind of off the ball question I had for you. We spoke about positions, and Chloe, you've moved position from time to time around the pitch. What position would you least like to play and why?
Prop. As I've said multiple times on this podcast. Yeah. I don't think that's a surprise. To be honest, I think I'd hate to play on the wing. Just bored. Like, I know obviously we speak about wingers coming in and getting involved, but like there's a certain element that you have to stay out there, don't you? Like, you can't just always be getting involved where it's not much of a winger. So yeah, I think the wing, like, I love being in the thick of it, and it's probably a thankless position, because you're out there and you might score a lot of tries and whatever, but it must be a little bit more boring, and it's hard, it's tough. Like, your one-on-one tackling has to be much better, because you're defending a bigger space. You have to be able to track a lot better because you have to cover the kick, you have to make those decisions. So yeah, I think I'd hate to be kind of stuck out there. It's quite isolating at times as well. So yeah, no, definitely winger, but the seconds then prop, yeah, definitely back.
Ilse, she's slating your position here. Is your least favourite position 8?
I actually started out as an 8, so can't complain. I love playing in the back. I'll play anywhere. I have played loose 8, tight 8, hooker. I've played second row. I've played flanker. I've played 8. I've never played 9 because I'm not mouthy enough, or so I believe. But I'm with you, back 3. Like, I always joke. I think Chloe has heard this several times where I say I want to retire as a fullback with all my friends in the backfield. Yeah, I would hate to play fullback. I would hate to play wing. Yeah, they're just they're not close enough to the ball. You don't see a wing hit the ruck. I love hitting rucks. So yeah, no, back 3. No, thank you.
I think for me, I played forward and in the backs lately, not particularly well. But rucks are an addictive thing. I moved from the pack out to 10, and the amount of times I had to get shouted at to stay out of rucks and be first receiver. You see it and you just want to hit it. There's something addictive about it. It's phenomenal. We might move on to finish up then with a little bit of a lucky dip from Keane.
I've got the lucky dip questions lined up again. So let's go Ilse first. Pick a jersey. I was going to say pick a jersey. Pick a number between 1 and 15 and we'll give you a random question.
6.
6. Okay. What's the most unexpected or surprising thing about being an international rugby player that people wouldn't guess?
What's the most surprising thing or unexpected thing?
Unexpected or surprising?
The amount of time you get when you are sitting around not actually doing as much as you think you are. I remember that, between sessions, so they're giving you downtime, supposedly, and everybody is sort of sitting and sleeping and doing this and doing that, and I'm trying to remember line-out calls because my memory is just shocking. But yeah, I did find that you can run me for 6 hours, but don't run me for 3 hours and then make me stop and then run me for another 3 hours. You can just run me for 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's that time between sessions where I sort of just like I'm floating around and I don't really know what to do with myself. So yeah, I just think it's the amount of time that you have where where people think you're constantly busy, but you're not actually doing that much.
Good answer. All right, Chloe, between 1 and 15 without 6. 6 gone.
I'll go to the wingers. I'll go 11.
Oh, you go 11. Okay. Oh, you'll like this one. Imagine there's a movie made about your rugby journey. Who's playing you and what's the theme song?
Oh, God. It's going to have to be like Melissa McCarthy or something for a bit of crack, isn't it? Like, you know.
So you see it done as a kind of a comedy?
A comedy.
Yeah. Inspirational comedy?
Yeah, I think, well, it's either like Melissa McCarthy or else like Tiffany Haddish, like someone who's just pure sassy and mad. Like, but I think I'm going to go with Melissa McCarthy. And it doesn't say a lot for me, but anyways, I'm talking like Melissa McCarthy from The Heat now, like, you know, one of that Melissa McCarthy, not her newer movies. And the theme song, I'm going to go with Jurassic Park because I love it. Just no reason. Just McCarthy with Jurassic Park.
Amazing. I would watch the hell out of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that says about you as a person.
I don't know. You're going to get a few laughs, like, anyway, like, you know, any stage I can try and throw in comedy, like in the middle of the game, I'll still do it, like, so I'm probably the only one laughing, but you can't laugh at yourself.
Amazing.
I need to know in the story of your life who's going to play Nicole Cronin.
Oh, well, you see, if I'm Melissa McCarthy, she's going to have to be Sandra Bullock before The Heat, you know.
I'm sure she'll take that.
Yeah, I think she'll have to. Like, if you're going to look at the duo like that, I think it has to be the two of us. Brilliant.
Right, on that note, I think we'll finish up. And a huge thank you to you, Chloe, for joining us again. And Ilse, your insights, valuable as ever. If you enjoy their insights, please follow the podcast and rate us wherever you listen. And thanks again for tuning in. Keep on rocking.